Hello everybody, I'm Ajit K. Mishra. I'm your course instructor for Essential Life Skills. This is a session on change management. You all are aware that I have been talking about essential leadership skills for the last few sessions. And in this session, you'll learn about change leadership and what change leadership is all about and why it is so important in our times and why it is so very important if we have to sustain our future goals. Before I can start to talk about change leadership, let me first take you through a very famous, wonderful quote by the futurist Alvin Toffler, who has very rightly said that the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Now, this statement by Toffler means a lot for change management. Change is imminent. It is the only constant. If I do not sound cliched, it is the only constant. And it is the only thing that can determine how well we progress. So change is crucial to everything around us. Similarly, change is also very, very important when it comes to leadership. So essential leadership skills will have to include a skill on change management, flexibility, and adaptability. So in this session, I'll walk you through the world of change management and its various components. We'll take them up one by one. But before that, let me tell you what change leadership is all about, which ultimately leads to change management. So change leadership is a style of management that emphasizes the importance of improvement and adaptability in an organization. So if we develop that approach to improvement and adaptability through a flexible stand, it will mean that we are ready for change. These days, we are generally asked this question: are you change ready? Is this organization change ready? If this setup change ready? If the answer is yes, then we are ready to adapt to the newer things. We are ready to mold ourselves according to the demand of the changes around us. So that is change leadership. It is always open to improvement and adaptability. Change leaders generally guide groups of people through changes in a productive manner, ensuring an organization can make strategic, smart, and successful adjustments to the way they operate. It also applies to the individual selves, because if an individual is not ready to adapt to the changes, is not flexible enough to accept the changes around him or her, it's going to be a big problem for the individual. And if it's a problem for the individual, it's going to be a problem for the organization, because individuals together make organizations. So change leadership is all about being able to accept changes, being able to adapt to the changes. So this type of leadership generally helps organizations keep up with an ever-changing world by building resources, using new technologies, and responding to crisis. So change leadership is one of the most talked about forms of leadership in our times, and it's one of the most vital or crucial forms of leadership in our times. So we cannot remain insulated to this form of leadership, that is change leadership. Let's take a look at its various components. First, how change leadership operates. Change leadership operates through three distinct stages or phases. The first, the self. It operates through a self. That means ourselves. We have to be ready to accept changes around us. We have to develop that adaptability to adapt to changes around us. We'll also have to develop that flexibility to be open-minded, to be open to changes around us. If we do not expect changes, if we do not make changes happen, that's going to make things stagnant after a while. And they will not evolve any further. And that will be a problem. That might also lead to the death of an organization, the death of self-development. If you remember, I talked about self-development and how important it is for all of us to develop great leadership skills. So, self-development requires that we develop an attitude towards change. The second important stage through which change leadership operates is others. So, change leadership also relates to other people around us. It also relates to how others approach change, and it also relates to how others prepare themselves to accept change around them. So, change leadership also operates through others. Because the self is not sufficient, we have to move out of the self and reach out to the others. So, change has to spread across all these things. Similarly, change leadership also operates through organizations. Because organizations are the place where changes occur, where changes are accepted or rejected, are the places where changes find channels of expression. And how do they find channels of expression? Through the individuals and the others, through multiple individuals. They find channels of expression. So it's very, very important for us to know how change leadership operates through self, through others, and through organizations. Let's take a look at how change leadership operates through the self. I can start with a few questions. How do I deal with change? Because we come across changes around us. Seasons change, times change, opportunities change, responsibilities change. There are so many changes around us that we negotiate every day. How do we respond to those changes around us? How do we deal with change? What is our current change challenge? What's going to change? What is the latest change that has happened around us? And how are we responding to that change? What is our role as change leaders? And what do we need to do differently? What is my default leadership style when faced with driving significant change? So these are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves. Similarly, we also need to ask several other questions. How do my change style preferences impact those around me? How do I ensure we have leadership capability for change throughout the organization? It will not happen that just one individual is ready, is going to change or going to accept change, and all others are not ready to accept change. That will lead to problems as well. So it's very, very important for for a person to ask this question so that we find an answer to these questions. The second channel through which change leadership operates is others. Again, we need to ask a few questions to check whether this particular channel is ready for change leadership or not. how do we help people through change? For example, I'm a change leader. I must make people accept change. I must persuade, convince them to accept change, especially when they have no control or choice. How do we understand as change leaders and respond to the different perspectives, feelings, and responses people have to change while achieving alignment with organizational aims or goals? That's a major question. That's a major challenge. How do we build a relationship and persuade supporters, detractors, and fence sitters, those who love to sit at a distance and just wait and watch? They play that game, wait and watch game. They do not do anything about it. They love to keep or remain neutral. Or they may be the activists who are in favor of change, and there are the detractors as well. They do not like any change. So how do we build a rapport with such people, relationships with such people? How do we persuade and convince these people? And then how do we bring them on board with the changes we are tasked with? So change leadership is much more than how we approach it. It's much more than what we think about it. The third important channel through which change leadership operates is organization, and the most important of all these channels. Again, a series of questions may be asked to check how change leadership can operate through this particular channel, that's organization. How do we lead change in the context of the larger organizational culture and its realities, multiple realities, political, social, cultural realities? How do we forge a network of change agents throughout the organization? Who are those people who are ready to adapt to changes, who are flexible enough to accept changes around them? How do we influence up, down, and across the organization? That means 360-degree leadership. How do we ensure that change is right for our team as well as it is right for the organization? And how do we ensure we have leadership capability for change throughout the organization? So these are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves when we are looking at these important channels of change, starting with the self, others, and the organization. That brings us to the end of this session. I'm sure you have taken note of the things that I talked about, and you're going to explore change leadership further. And when you have done that, you'll feel extremely confident about it, and you can also act as change leaders. And until then, bye-bye.